how my game went from this to this to this and to this.
So much more work to do. Hey everyone, I'm Matt with Make It So Games, and welcome back to my channel. This is my second devlog for my game Beyond the Grave. I'm making it in GameMaker. It's going to be a commercial game, and it's a platformer. So I wanted to show you my progress from the first devlog, and also show you progress from the beginning of June when I first started committing to GitHub, and also I want to go over what's to come in the future. So stay tuned, make sure you watch till the end because I have a special announcement. Okay, I'm going to run the game in GameMaker, and it's going to bring up the title screen, which is new from the first devlog. I'll hit escape to maximize that. And on the top left here, the input manager, or the notification manager is telling me I'm using the keyboard. If I press a button on the controller, it tells me I'm using the controller now. And the sprites change depending on if it's Xbox versus PlayStation. So there's PlayStation, there's Xbox. Now I can unplug the gamepad and plug it back in, and that will be detected. Obviously that's pretty basic, but very crucial. I press start, and we will go to the game selection screen. There's going to be 3 files that the user can save and load from. Right now, game 1 is my main testing file, so I'm not going to delete that. I last saved on the 28th. And I've been testing that for about 39 minutes here. Game 3, I'm going to delete that and start a new game here. So initially you'll see that when you start a new game, there's going to be like a little tutorial graphic above the player. This tells you some of the basic controls. You can hold R2 and you can run, otherwise you walk. You can press R1 to block.
Hey, this is Future Matt. If you're hearing this right now, like the video. It helps a lot, especially for small channels like mine. The YouTube algorithm loves it. Okay, thanks. Bye.
If you press B or circle on PlayStation, you'll do the roll, and then you can press start to pause. Now in the pause menu, I got some of these settings to animate, so that's just adding some polish. On the bottom middle here, it tells you what each setting does. All right, so we have our settings, controls, and then you can exit the game. If I go to settings, we have our audio settings for the volume. You can modify those. The graphic settings, you can toggle all of these off and on. We have a full screen. You can turn off screen shake. Special effects, that's going to be some of the blurring and the glowing effects that can slow down just like an older computer. So it's a good idea to turn that off if you have an older computer. And then some other graphical options like the enemy HP bars and the enemy damage text. You can toggle that off and on. All right, so we'll go back to the game here. And initially you'll see one of the main juicy changes here is going to be the parallaxing. So in my opinion, it looks pretty good. As you go back further in the layers, it gets blurry. It makes it look cool. And I redid that pine tree as well. So this pine tree here is a different graphic than the initial devlog. Obviously it's still not great, but for now it's the best I can do. This tree is new, and these bushes back here are new. So got a lot of environment stuff to draw still. Let's see what else I have. The tile sets in the background. These 2 tile sets here are the same as this foreground one, but in terms of the graphics, the sprite in GameMaker, I have it so there's an overlay over this one and this one that get darker. So using the same tile set just a separate sprite in GameMaker that is a little bit darker, and that way you can differentiate the different layers. Now in the options here, you can actually turn that off, so you can see now that the background really isn't blurry. And what else that does is it changes the lightning. There's no glow effect when the lightning strikes, and so that actually for some reason really slows down the game on older computers. But I'll turn that back on. So it's blurry, and you can see that glow effect when the lightning strikes. Really cool. Definitely adds a lot of juice to the game. Let's see. The lighting effect in general is new. So these torches here, that is a new feature. Right now, this level is kind of dark. It's nighttime, so these torches will light up the area. Just adds a nice little touch to the game. These torches here, they light up when you get close to them, and this is kind of like reading a sign in typical games. You press up, and you can listen to the fire. It gives you some information. In this case, this is a sign. The wisdom of the fire is giving you knowledge about the game. All right, so this is kind of how you read signs in my game. Different signs will tell you different things. This one is just detecting what controller you're using. It tells you, and then it shows you what the buttons are. This is all for testing purposes, but if you press, say, P on the keyboard, it'll show the keyboard sprites here and on the bottom right. So these are the Xbox sprites. You can see them here and on the bottom right. If I press something on the keyboard, they change to the keyboard sprites. If I press L1, now it shows me the PlayStation sprites. So again, that's automatically going to be detected in the actual game, depending on what type of gamepad the user has plugged in. That is showing me PlayStation versus Xbox. Okay, so next up, I'm going to show you that now you can toss the enemy. It's a new move. When I move to the right here, because this is a new game, the first enemy is going to pop out of the ground. That's kind of their entrance into the game environment, and there's going to be a little cutscene. So there it goes. All right, so first enemy, cutscene pops up. This is your first enemy encounter. Attack with X and Y. Again, depending on what controller you have, or if you're using the keyboard, it'll change. Block with R1 and dodge with circle. Defeat the enemies to disable cage's boundary and proceed. So on the right here, you can see that there's like this purple, really what this is a particle system. So this is a particle system here. It's kind of like God of War. When enemies appear in the room or in the area, when you trigger enemies, you have to kill all of them before you can move on to the next area. All right, so I'll just do some basic combos here to kill him. All right, collect my orbs. And then the cutscene is, because this is a brand new game, great work, you defeated your first enemy. You'll automatically collect orbs after defeating an enemy. You can use orbs to upgrade your skills. All right, so that boundary disappears, and now you can proceed. And again, this is all new. Before, this was very bland in the first devlog. Let me show tossing the enemy. So it's kind of like Tekken. You block, and then you press punch. And the best way to grab them is to block their attack and then toss them. So you cannot block the jump kicks. See that? You have to roll from those, or you can roll past the punch. But that you have to roll. This one you can block. And then boom, tossed him. So that's a new move. That's new from the first devlog. One major factor that's new is the gravity. So in the first devlog and for months now, I've had it so the gravity was very floaty, and it just, I don't know why I had it like that for so long. It was actually really bad. Now the gravity's doubled, and it's just way better. It's faster, you're not floaty, it feels much better. As you can see, I'm actually spawning in enemies with L1. That's just for testing purposes. You can parry the enemy there. And if you have a bunch of enemies and you parry them, they all get damage like this. Let me see if I can do it. Alright, see that? Alright, I'm going to change the settings. I'm going to make the difficulty so they're not as aggressive, and only one at a time can attack me. Now the cool thing is, if I spawn in a couple different enemies, you can actually cause damage. You can see that you can toss the enemies into the other enemies, which is kind of fun. So here I'm doing a combo, and if you time the combo just right, it'll damage the enemies in a certain radius. Now you can also stomp the enemy. Now you can also jump kick. Oh, you jump kicked me. Jump kick, and then you can stomp the enemy if you do it fast enough. You can dive roll onto them. You can also do a belly flop, which is inspiration from Streets of Rage, I'm pretty sure it is. That's kind of fun too. You can hit multiple enemies with that. Okay, next is the camera movement. Okay, so on this screen, the room is really wide to the left, and as you walk over from the right to the left, you'll see that the rain starts to kick in. It's kind of cool. This will be an area where you go from no rain to rain, and as you make your way over to the far left, the rain just gets heavier and louder. And if you go back to the right, the rain stops, and the lightning stops about halfway through the room. Now, one change I made with the camera movement is that if you're walking, or just in general here, if you're standing still, the camera will kind of look off to the left or right a little bit, off-centered. So it's a little biased to look kind of in front of the player, pretty typical of games like Hollow Knight. But if you're running, what it does is it gives you even more leeway, so you can see in front of you a lot further. And that way, if you're doing some kind of platforming, you'll be able to see in front of you. So that's a lot different than just walking. If there's an enemy on screen, it won't detect as if you're running. If you have an enemy on the screen and you're running, it'll still just be biased as if you're walking. But as soon as that enemy leaves the screen, then it'll give you more space in front of you. See that? So I just want to go over some of the details in the game that you might not notice if I didn't tell you. Like these slopes here, if you're going up the slope or down the slope, you're going to move faster or slower, just like in real life. A lot of times in games, the speed kind of just remains the same. Slope detection and dealing with slope collisions is always a challenge in 2D games, 2D platformers. But I made it so, depending on if you're going up or down, you're actually going to move slower or faster. Also the footsteps, so depending on what surface you're walking on, right? So if you're walking on the rain or the puddles versus the grass, you're going to get a different sound and a different particle effect. Even if your left foot's on the grass and your right foot's on the water, you get two different particles there. Just the fine details that add a lot of polish to the game. And when you can roll through it. Just looks and sounds cool. Gives a lot of good feel. And then the mirrors are pretty cool here. This is how you save your game. So you have to be able to, you go up to the mirror, you see yourself in there, you press up, it says reflect, and this sign tells you, look into the mirror to reflect upon your progress. This will save your game. So that's kind of how that works. Press up, go to save, does a little glow effect, and then it tells you game 3 progress has been saved on this date and time. Now, the way the mirrors work, it's just, in GameMaker terms, it's drawing a surface, and the way I had to do this is if you're on the right, it's going to be detecting, this area. If you're on the left of the mirror, it detects this area, but it can't detect both at the same time. It just doesn't work like that. So if I have an enemy over here, it's kind of funny. It actually, it won't show the enemy if I'm on the left side of the mirror. And if I'm over here, it will show the enemy. And vice versa for the other side. It actually changes when I'm to the left of the mirror here. See that? Anyway, another particle is when you actually hit the enemy. You can see here, it's got an effect as if like an energy pulse, if you will. So if you haven't noticed already, there's screen shake in the game. right? So when you attack the enemies or when they attack you, a lot of screen shake, add some of that juice to the game. You also have the hit stop. So when I do like a special move like this, see it briefly pauses the game, it slows down for a couple frames. Just makes it more impactful. And then you got the white flashing, right? So when you punch the enemy or when they hit you, you're gonna flash white. When you get hit, the background flashes red just because it's an indicator that you got hit. Now when you kill the enemy, that final hit's gonna be red. All right, so that's just a little bit different. Then you have the particles of like when the enemy dies, you can see that you get that black cloud there. Kind of got the inspiration from God of War as well. And that's pretty much it for some of the juice and the polish. The game has a lot of managers. Let me exit out of the game here and go to my assets. So over here in the assets, you see I have a camera manager, a game manager, a manager for sound, lighting, input, time. Got the pause menu, transition object, cutscene object, dialogue, notifications, confirmations. One thing that I will be working on, and this is from Thomas Brush, is the Trinity hook. So the Trinity hook is three hooks for your game that are going to bring in players, which would be the visual hook or the sensory, the mechanical hook, and the story hook. So the story for me, I really don't have any kind of story yet. I just have some basic ideas floating around. I really have to flesh that out soon. The mechanical hook is just the gameplay in general. Anytime anyone tests the game, they have a lot of fun. It seems like they can't really put the controller down. It is kind of addicting to fight the enemies, and I'm going to be adding more combos and moves and attacks and abilities. So it's just hopefully it just gets even more fun. But that's kind of the mechanical hook. Is the gameplay is pretty smooth. It's tight. It's a platformer game, but it's also like a fighting kind of beat 'em up game, or even a Souls-like where you can dodge and roll and block and parry. So that's kind of where the mechanical hook comes in. For the visual hook, I've done my best with the parallaxing and the blurring and the layers and some of the graphics, but I will eventually do a graphics overhaul. So I'm going to have to probably commission that out or partner up with someone or do something to make those graphics better. So I'm hoping that eventually I can find someone that is willing to work with me and redo all the sprites, all the tile sets, all the environment objects. It's just right now it looks okay, but that's super important to have the graphics really good. Now it's not 100% necessary. Obviously there's some games out there that the graphics really aren't that great and they're a huge hit still. So it really depends. I mean, with the Trinity hook, I feel like you can have 2 out of the 3 be really good and the third one won't matter as much, but every game's different, so it just really depends. But I do want all pieces of the Trinity hook to really be dialed in by the time I release this game. So what's to come? What's next? Let me show you my Milanote here. So on Milanote, I have all kinds of stuff on here, a huge to-do list, and checking things off as I go. Right now, I haven't even been looking at this. I have a separate list, which I'll show now. And this is my list that I need to complete to basically get a vertical slice demo out there. So I have a Steam page in the works. I have an itch.io page. I really need to get a demo that has a full gameplay loop. And so I need to basically one by one, work through this list to get the vertical slice ready for a playable demo. So that's kind of what I'm working towards. The main next thing I have to do is actually the hero death. So right now he has no health, you can't die, you don't start over and go back to a checkpoint. So that's going to be the next step in my vertical slice checklist, which is going to be really cool to get that done. Once you actually are able to die, then you have to be careful. You have to fight strategically, and you lose progress if you do die. So that'll be a fun next step. I definitely plan on doing that for my next devlog, Devlog 3. And here's my GitHub. So since the beginning of June, I've been basically committing pretty much every day. I would say 1.5 times on average per day. So 1 to 3 times per day I've been committing, and at the end of the day I'll commit or before or after some major change. I'll always make sure I commit. I did lose my progress. A couple months ago my game got corrupted, and that was absolutely horrible. Luckily I could revert to the previous day. I did lose a day's worth of work. That was pretty rough. I highly recommend you use GitHub or some form of that. Make sure you are versioning your files and your game files. You don't want to lose all your work. That would be absolutely horrible if I didn't get on GitHub months ago. So make sure you're doing that. All right, that's the end of the devlog. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you want to see Devlog 3 and follow me on my journey to make this game a commercial release. The special announcement I had for this video is that I need playtesters. So if you made it this far and you're curious, you want to help me out, you can be a playtester. I'll have a link to a demo for Steam and Itch at some point in the near future. I need the feedback. So either private message me, join my Discord, or email me, and we'll make sure we get you on the list so you can be a playtester. I'd really appreciate the feedback. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.